Good morning. Right. Far be it from me to have a political point of view. I mean, as many people who know me, I am completely rational when it comes to politics. Um, I just hate corruption and I hate people who make their living out of screwing other people. So today I thought what I would do is I'd talk a bit about politics. I know this is very close to my last podcast yesterday, but I thought I was disturbed this morning when I listened to the radio and heard of this enormous hydrogen plant using electrolyzers being built up in Scotland, taking excess energy from wind farms, which is not a bad idea, taking excess energy from wind farms. But frankly, electrolyzers, really? You take electricity and turn it into hydrogen and then use the hydrogen to make electricity? Boy, some at 30% efficiency or maybe 40% efficiency at best. Maybe it makes economic sense if somebody is paying a huge amount of grant funding for the electrolyzers, which after all are quite expensive. So I, I thought, well, it's about time I said something about um, the the basic corruption within the UK government, which is not just this government, certainly not this government. It's less corrupt than the previous one, but for over a long period of time where it has been dominated by people who go out and have expensive lunches and go to dinner parties, um, or wield some political power. And what I mean by that is this. Uh, I'm at the moment trying to find out how £4 million was given to a fuel cell company that has basically done very little. And that £4 million would go very well towards building systems not only in Sefton but in all of the northwest. Uh, and at the same time, I'm thinking, it's a bit odd that Scintilla, the CME, was burned to the ground in an arson attack. Who would do that? Why would they do it? I mean, that was the only place that was burnt down on the site. So it it lends itself to many questions, and the question was a big question: who would do it, and who would give? Why would £4 million be given to a fuel cell company that hasn't really performed very well? Not to say that one of its major shareholders is a disgraced MP called Tim Yeo, who was so bad his constituents threw him out of office. I mean, he didn't have to go to an election; they came round and ran him off basically on a rail. So uh, why would £4 million go like that? And why isn't £4 million being put into other fuel cell companies? Indeed, why isn't £4 million given to Scintilla to recover from the arson attack, which they could not get insurance for because they were on Liverpool council property? So this is by way of saying what makes this work. Now, when I found out about the £4 million, I thought this is good. The Department of Energy is giving money to fuel cell companies and people who make hydrogen in order to be able to kickstart the industry. And that was very good. How did it happen? Why was this company given money? Because if we know why, then Scintilla or the other CMEs could make applications in exactly the same way. And at the same time, why was Scintilla burnt down? Well, let's go to the kind of dramatic stuff first, the Scintilla being burnt down. You've got to actually think, who would benefit from Scintilla being burned down? Well, Scintilla was actually making fuel cells of a very advanced technology. So you can instantly say, well, maybe its competitors burnt it down. Maybe. It might very well be that competitors, not just in the fuel cell industry, but international competitors, such as the Israelis, who took over all the equipment and manufacturing facilities of Z-Tech and took them off to Israel. Now, I'm not saying that Mossad actually flew in some guys parachuted in with some gasoline cans and burned Scintilla, but it does ask the question, and it asks the question why the Merseyside police have done very little to try and find out what happened. Maybe it was, in fact, the electricity companies who could see them as a competitor and could see them actually producing community-powered electricity. Maybe it was other fuel cell companies. Mind you, I wouldn't have given the other fuel cell companies the imagination to be able to burn down Scintilla. But in any event, somebody did, and there must have been a reason for doing so, because this wasn't just some sort of teenager going in. They actually disassembled the security gates. They disassembled it. So this was an operation that was thought out. So why would somebody do that? Anyway, that's something to think about, because it has a huge effect on being able to provide Sefton with energy, because Scintilla, which was a Liverpool company and based in Liverpool, has to start up again, and it delays it and delays it and delays it. So it means that community power is more distant. So that's one thing. The second thing is that why is it that one company is given money but not another? Or why is it that the opportunities given to one company are not open to others? So I wrote to the Department of Net Zero and said, okay, here's a bunch of questions on how did they get the money, so that we, i.e. Scintilla or companies like Scintilla, and by the way, I have no shares and no directorship or anything like that in Scintilla. Why is it, how did this work so that they could actually make the same applications? Now, this grant was made in 2024 during the previous government, and Tim Yeo still had a lot of pals in Parliament, and I suspect that he had pals in the Department of Energy as well. I don't know whether it was Tim Yeo or not. I wouldn't hazard a guess, but it does seem to me that it deserves questions. And anyway, so I wrote to the Department of Energy and said, okay, how did this company get this money? If you can answer these questions, then it would make it easier for us to make an application for the same thing. Guess what happened? No answer, not at all. Now, I wrote to them and sent them registered letters. It wasn't like we're sorry, we didn't see the letter. Yes, they did, because they answered the registered letters, and I also emailed them and blah 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 blah. I did this, I think, 4 times. No answer at all. Not even an acknowledgement of the letter. Nothing. Absolutely dead silence. So it was clear that they did not want to answer that question, and they did not want to give up any information. So the next step was that I wrote to my local MP, who's in London, and he's a newly elected Labour MP for Kensington and Chelsea. I didn't get any response for him immediately, and I kept on pressing him, and finally I got a response. Oh, I will take a look at this. That was months ago, and I've written to him several times since, and I still haven't had an answer. So I haven't had an answer from the Department of Energy as to how one company gets a £4 million grant, and how do I help Scintilla get a £4 million grant, or indeed any of the other small manufacturers using the technologies that we created. As I say, I have no shares in any of these companies, so I don't get any financial benefit. Now, I then went to a friend of mine in the House of Lords. He put me on to another member of the House of Lords who has been trying to get an appointment before the minister, but this is not actually, this has gone quite quiet, and I suspect it's because he can't. Equally, I've written to the Select Committee of the Net Zero, Department of Net Zero, the chairman of which happens to be the MP for Sefton. So if you're of a mind, you may ask him why this hasn't gone through. But the clerk who administers all the letters that go into the Department of Net Zero has taken a lot of information, but has provided very little in return, because he can't. And his last response to my letter, we don't deal in individual cases, we deal in policy. Well, hello, policy. Policy is about where you spend taxpayers' money. That's policy. So it's reasonable to ask him, well, how does that work? This has not gone before the select committee, or maybe it has gone through the select committee, because I wrote to every member of the select committee, but it hasn't come up. So the question is, and a part of what I've said, by the way, to the select committee is that this is about community energy, and we can do this, and this is the technology, and I've sent papers and stuff like this to them, so they can't say that they didn't understand it, and if they didn't understand it, they could have always asked. But in any event, nothing has happened. So Scintilla and all these other CMEs like Inspire and Tabard and some of the other companies that are CMEs have not got the same benefits as the other companies that the government has decided to fund. But what's interesting is this. We now have a Labour government. This was a Tory project. It was the Tories that gave the £4 million. Why is a Labour government defending it by not answering any questions? Why is the chairman of the select committee not responded? Does he not know? Now, there is a possibility he doesn't know, and that is because civil servants don't always pass on all the information to their greater parts. Peter Haynes, for instance, did not know about Zetec, even though it was the second largest fuel cell company in the world. And the only way he got to know was that I managed to get to him personally. His civil servant, Ray Eaton, for 5 years, didn't bother to tell any of the ministers of energy that Britain had the second largest fuel cell company in the world and the largest fuel cell manufacturing factory in the world, which was in Germany because Britain didn't help fund it. Why didn't he tell the minister? Is it that the civil servants are not telling ministers? Is it that they are doling out money without any oversight? And if they are doling out any money without, so why? And I will leave you with that question. And perhaps you can write to your MP and say, hey, we'd like to know about this. You can always write to me and ask me what I actually sent, and I'll be glad to send it to you. And you can see for yourself the questions that I asked, which are quite reasonable questions. Bye for now.